Good evening, everybody. I am Erika, founder of Plant Power Bootcamp. I train everybody from men and women, beginners to athletes, on how to optimize their performance on a plant-based diet. So today I'm going to talk to you about that. So first off, let's share my screen. Cracking the code, optimal endurance performance on a plant-based diet by me. So no matter how big or small your athletic goals are, you need the right fuel to get you through the training. I think we can all agree on that. What the right fuel is has been debated for a while. But I'm going to tell you why a whole food plant-based diet is quite optimal. So first of all, let's talk about the fact that a whole food plant-based diet is essentially an anti-inflammatory diet. And what that means basically is with the less inflammation in your muscles and in your body, you have a quicker recovery time. And when you have a quicker recovery time, you get to train more. When you train more and you train harder, you get faster and stronger. And that means you crush your goals. So let's look at some of the more nutritional science points of an anti-inflammatory diet. So first thing you need to understand that carbs, fats, and proteins all work together as a symphony. And that there's no need to really hyper-focus on a single nutrient like protein, although you naturally will anyways. So since I like to meet people where they're at, this is the first time that you're hearing about a whole food plant-based diet, we will focus on the specific macronutrients. I just want to stress that all foods, to some degree, contain mostly carbs, fats, and proteins in varying amounts. So most people want to focus on the protein. So protein's role is to rebuild and repair our muscles, and it's not an optimal source of fuel. The optimal source of fuel for our body is glycogen, which we get from carbohydrates, and its second source of fuel, which is not optimal, is fats. You want to avoid running out of carbohydrates and fats and going into your body burning protein, muscle, as fuel. So that means your nutrition needs to be on point. Because if you've ever bonked before, it means that your body has essentially run out of its first two sources of fuel, carbs and fats. So therefore, the more sources of these macronutrients in your body, the more likely you will crush your goals. And a whole food plant-based diet is naturally high in fiber, micronutrients, and minerals. So those are all elements that are very important to keep a very active person and a very person in shape. So that also helps crush your goals. This is a little quote from pcrm.org, which I suggest you follow. It's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. High protein diets for weight loss, disease prevention, and enhanced athletic performance have been greatly publicized over recent years. However, these diets are not supported by little scientific research, and studies show that the healthiest diet is one that is high in carbohydrate, moderate to low in fat, and just adequate in protein. So we're going to talk about some of the most common nutrition mistakes people make when they start a new fitness training program. 1, you cut out or back on carbohydrates. 2, you focus excessively on protein consumption. 3, you're under eating. You're not reaching your total daily energy expenditure. And 4, you're not meal planning and prepping. You're always just sort of winging it. One of my favorite quotes I always tell my clients is that if you fail to prepare, then you should prepare to fail. So let's take a look at number one, cutting out or back on carbohydrates. Carbs are the secret to optimal athletic performance. It's not a secret, but if you didn't realize it before, now you know. So carbohydrates provide your muscles and brain with glucose, and they are the body's first and easiest form of energy to be broken down. So having them built around your workouts, regardless of your time of day, is important for an effective training session and increased performance. So you have to have enough carbohydrates before your workout, and you have to have enough to refuel your tank after your workout. So there's no cutting back or out of carbohydrates. Absolutely not. Not an option. There's actually adding more carbohydrates. And carbohydrates have a caloric value of 4. And that means that you can eat quite a lot of carbohydrates, and it's not going to really increase your overall calories, right? So this is good if you are wanting to lose weight, but if you need to create a really, really high caloric profile because you're training for an Ironman, it means that you have to eat more. So you have to make sure that you're eating enough. So many people that are doing endurance sports are just simply not eating enough. They're eating the bare minimum and they don't even realize it. So let's take a look at complex carbohydrates, as they are the cornerstone of a whole food plant-based diet because they contain optimal protein as well. So it's so great that nature gave us carbohydrates and protein all together. So that is what we refer to as the symphony. Quinoa is technically a all 9 essential amino acid food, so is complete protein. And 1 serving of cooked quinoa has 8 grams of protein. So you want to start to look into different types of grains. Just, I could eat brown rice and sweet potatoes all day, but you gotta learn to switch it up. And calories are not all created equal. So this is something that I see a lot in the triathlete community, is that there's a false mentality that I trained super hard today, so I earn eating any type of food I want and drinking 3 beers. Well, that's not true. I mean, you can go ahead and do that if you want, but you're not going to be training optimally and not at your highest level. It's going to slow you down and it's going to catch up with you. So you want to focus on eating the good anti-inflammatory foods and avoiding the bad inflammatory foods. Processed meat, dairy, and junk food that contains too much sugar are all going to create inflammation. Alcohol is also listed as a food, as something that causes a lot of inflammation in the body. So if you're one of these people that trains really hard and then kicks back like 3 or 4 beers because you've earned it, you are causing inflammation to your body that's already trying to rest and rebuild and repair from the 100-mile training ride that you just did. So it's not the best choice for an athlete. So people don't like it when I tell them to stop drinking their alcohol. So we'll just move on. I'll just let you think about that. Mistake number 2, excessive increase in protein consumption from animal sources. So this is when you when athletes start to hyper-focus on eating a lot of protein. Not the right mindset. Well, what really happens when you eat a diet high in animal protein? First of all, your body uses protein on an hour-by-hour basis, and literally at the end of 24 hours, all of the extra protein that you've consumed is taxed on your other organs, specifically your kidneys, and it's peed out. It's a very intricate process that I won't explain here because I don't want to bore you. But just know that you don't get to use your protein the next day. You can use your carbs and fats as fuel, but not protein. You put yourself at risk for stroke and heart disease. And last time I checked, if you're an endurance athlete, you should not be putting extra stress on your cardiovascular system at all. And the average age of people that get into very heavy triathlete training, we're in our 40s or in our 50s, you might already have some underlying like tendencies of for stroke and heart disease. So we want to start to prevent and reverse that, not add to it by thinking that you need to eat a bunch of animal protein, because you don't. And I mean, guys, you're gonna have a problem pooping. So all of the animal protein contains how much fiber? 0. Okay, 0. Okay, which puts you at risk for colon and breast cancers, IBS, stroke, high cholesterol, and heart disease. The plant proteins, they have tons of fiber, antioxidants, phytonutrients. So you want to go for the whole food plant-based proteins. So let's talk about the biggest question is, how much protein do you really need? So take out a piece of pen and paper, go ahead and do your calculations. So this is your standard to calculate your protein intake. At any point, we're going to get interrupted by John, who just is coming off the bike. I think he probably did about 70 miles. So sorry if he comes barreling in here. Okay, so you take your weight in pounds and you divide it by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms. And then you have a range, right? So the lowest that you need is 0.8. And that is literally the amount of protein, aka nitrogen, from the amino acids breaking down that your body needs to just like function, like blink your eyes, like, you know, not really high functioning. It's just to actually keep you alive, right? It's so easy to get that amount of protein. You should do that calculation of what 0.8 is right now, so that you can see what that number is. And you're like, oh my goodness, like you're getting that before lunch, even if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, right? Or by lunch. So let's use 1.5 because that is a number that correlates to people that are involved in consistent and intense weight or endurance training, which is you guys. So for example, 154-pound male who does regular exercise, it's referred to as your PAL, physical activity level, would need 105 grams of protein a day. So here's a couple of pointers. I've had a lot of people say to me, for example, let's say that this person comes to me and they're male and they're 154 pounds and I was told I have to eat 200 grams of protein a day. And I tell them, I'm like, well, that's literally twice the amount that you need. And then they're like, no, like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, have you ever like calculated your protein intake? And they're like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, okay, well, let's just look at the numbers. And then look at the numbers and I, start to explain to them and they're just like, oh, because, they just heard or someone said or whatever. And they're not really understanding what their real number is. There's also another theory out there that you need 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, which also technically isn't true. That's just, someone came up with that because people just didn't want to do these 2 steps to just do the math. It's not a hard math problem. Like anybody can do this. I was terrible at math and I can do this, so you can too. So do the math. So let's look at your plant-based protein sources. Obviously, what comes to mind when you're doing this diet for the first time is you have to eat a lot of tofu and that you have to drink protein shakes to get your protein in. That's only if you're thinking about it as that every food is like compartmentalized. You're not thinking about the symphony, right? So a lot of these protein sources also contain the healthy fats. So the symphony continues. So nuts are a very good source of protein, and they're also high in fat. And if you're an endurance training athlete and you're really trying to watch your caloric intake, you want to get a lot of your calories from whole food sources of fat, no oil. So you want avocados, nuts, and seeds. We have tempeh. Look at how much protein is in tempeh. Also a really great source of healthy fats, okay? Not the animal fat that's going to clog your heart. So these are all really great examples of protein. So edamame is tofu, same thing, soybeans. Make sure that when you have the option to choose organic, because we don't want GMO soy intake. Let's look at this nice little quote from pcrm.org. High carbohydrate, low fat, moderate protein diets are recommended for athletic performance. Contrary to the information on fad diets currently promoted in some popular books, a diet that is high in protein can actually contribute to disease and other health problems. So let's look at the myth that you need protein complementing the same meal. Is that really true? So basically, this is as basic as I could make it. The answer is no. So we know that we need 9 essential amino acids that our body can't produce. We have to get it from food. There are some plant-based sources that do contain all 9. So it's a falsity that only animal products contain all 9. That's not true. Tofu, tempeh, edamame beans, quinoa, and buckwheat actually technically contain all 9. And all other foods contain the essential amino acids in varying amounts. And it's also false to think that plant-based proteins contain a low amount. It's not a low amount, it's just a varying amount. So because it's a varying amount, if you're eating a varied diet, it all gets used at the end of the day. So it's like going out and trying to collect all the Pokemons by the end of the day. If you're eating and you're fueling yourself and you're treating your nutrition as something that's very mindful and that it's planned, just as if you would plan your workouts, plan your nutrition, you're not going to have a problem reaching your protein intake. Especially once you realize what your protein intake needs really are. I'm not against adding in a protein shake to make it easier to increase your macronutrients, especially for athletes who are doing a lot of high training, just because the volume of food that you have to eat can get a little boring after a little while. So being able to drink your calories is really nice. So definitely get a plant-based protein powder if you want to. So I think I got off track. Okay, so the key to obtaining all the essential amino acids is to consume sufficient calories. So pretty much the only exception would be if you were one of those fruitarian people, because you would get into trouble, because fruit, though it does contain some protein, is very, very low. So basically, you know, if you eat whole grains for breakfast and beans at lunch, your body can figure out how to combine those amino acids as they start to appear and use them immediately. And like I said before, plant-based proteins aren't low in amino acids. They're just varying amounts. They're usually just lacking in 1 or 2 of the amino acids at most. So it's just simply eating a varied diet. And then this is, again, just reiterating the fact that unlike fat and starch, the body doesn't store excess protein for use the next day, because maintaining a nitrogen balance is key in the body. So eating a high protein diet is really of no use. Places extra work on your body's kidney system to break down the extra amino acids, which creates ammonia, and to pass it through the urine. So your body's telling you to get the fuck out. Just to tell you, that's just how I explain it. So let's move on from protein. Hope that was pretty helpful for you guys. Let's see. Under eating. So no one likes a hangry athlete, right? So here's some pro tips if you're finding that you're always hungry while in training mode on a plant-based diet. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but carbs, fats, and proteins all have a caloric value. Carbohydrates have a caloric value of 4. Protein also has a caloric value of 4. And fats have a caloric value of 9, just over twice the amount of carbs and proteins. So when you're planning your meals, every single meal has to have a carb, a fat, and a protein. If you're like I told you to never go low carb, you should never go low fat. You should drop your fat from oil because oil can clog your heart arteries, your endothelial cells. And we do want to make sure that our heart is very healthy as the older we get. But you don't have to be completely oil-free unless, of course, like you just suffered a massive heart attack and you had like bypass surgery. In that case, I would definitely put you on a very strict oil-free diet, but it is nice to be really mindful of your oil and start to judge yourself about how much you've been using. Like if you're taking a bunch of oil and throwing tons of it in a pan just to like cook some broccoli, you really should just be steaming that broccoli, and you should be getting your fat from a whole food source, like eating avocados, nuts, and seeds. Because personally, I'd rather eat my food than have it be just secret calories like oil. Unless it's like a really good, like special, like olive oil from Italy that's got like all these really intense flavors in it. Then you use it, you can use it a little bit. So I think I got off on a tangent there. So let's talk about portions are too small. So eating plant-based is naturally lower in calories. This is good if you want to lose weight, but it's bad if you're training for an Ironman. So you have to increase the volume of your meals and increase your fat intake from whole food sources. You have poor meal planning. So all meals must have balanced carbs, fats, and proteins. Not eating a big enough breakfast or lunch. See this all the time, and this means that you weren't prepared. So it leaves you hangry on the second half of the day. You have to front load your meals, which means that you have to do meal prep. There's no way around it, especially if you have a very busy work day. So front loading is the term that I use for making sure that you're eating a big enough breakfast and lunch. Because you'd be surprised how many people like, I'm hungry all the time. And that means that like they drink a ton of coffee in the morning, they suppress their hunger levels, then they train super hard, and then they got off the bike and then they didn't want to eat because they just trained super hard, and then they have a bar and a protein shake, and it's like 6 o'clock at night, and there's no amount of food that can like satiate the hunger levels, and then they go to bed hungry, and then they wake up hungry, and then they're just hungry. You can't get behind during your caloric intake. And also dehydration can make you feel hungry. So instead of just focusing on water, you can make sure that you're drinking green proteins and green smoothies to help facilitate more liquids. So let's talk about mistake number 4, which I've already mentioned. There's no meal planning or prepping. So there's so many resources out there for you to help with meal planning and prepping. So you should reach out and use those. Like, for example, this is like the Forks Over Knives app, which does all of your meals. They do pretty low fat. So I definitely would, when I look at these meals, I would add more fat to them for Ironman triathletes. But this is a really great resource. It tells you exactly what you need to do step by step for each meal. You don't have to try and reinvent the wheel by yourself. Like, find somebody else that's done the work and just copy it. So there's no excuse. So I always tell people, what's the point of bonking like during a training session on like a bike that cost you like $8,000 with a program that you paid your trainer really good money for? Like, there's no point. You got to get your shit together on all the levels. And this is one of my other pet peeves with athletes, is that they're relying on course nutrition supplements to make up for bad off course nutrition. Okay, I live with a person that's done like 12 Ironmans, so I've seen this firsthand, and it drives me crazy. So, on course nutrition needs to be on point. I'm never going to be an anti-on-course nutrition supplement person, because you definitely need it. But you have to be really honest with yourself and ask if you're trying to make up for your lack of off-course nutrition by taking a lot of supplements before you train and after you train. You can only get so much fuel from taking in a lot of caffeine. What you need to be doing is making sure you're eating enough carbohydrates. I think you understand my point. Okay, that's me yelling at you. It's me being tough love coach. So here's a sample meal plan. You have breakfast, oats, walnuts, hemp seeds, 1 large banana, blueberries, 3 dates, and a plant-based protein shake that has frozen greens, blueberries, raspberries, all those foods that are high in antioxidants. You can throw some turmeric in there. The protein powder that I use right now is Orgain, and they sell it everywhere now. It's organic, it's great, mix is great. We are not in our house allegiant to any one specific plant-based protein powder. There's so many out there. Now it's like amazing how many are out there. So just find one that you like. Then you have a snack. You can do a plant-based protein bar and an apple. Again, most people would maybe just reach for a piece of fruit or just a protein bar. But if you're training heavy, you need to make sure you're keeping your calories high and front loading. So then we move on to lunch. So we do a big bowl, right? We have rice, that's our carbohydrate. Your veggies, your protein, and your fat. So you have a complete meal here. All of the nutrients are being met. Then you have a snack, hummus, raw carrots, peppers, broccoli, handful of almonds. Why? Because almonds contain fat and protein again, right? So even this little snack, you're getting, again, all 3, carbs, fats, and proteins. The fats are really important there. They're your transportation team. They're your little taxis to get all of the phytonutrients from all of the healthy food that you eat into your cells, right? So you got to make sure that you're taking in the right amount of fat. And then for dinner, I didn't write dinner here. You can do a protein power kale salad. So this is just a giant bowl the size of your head, right? That's why I say salad's the size of your head. All the raw veggies that you want, right? Then you're going to add lentils, quinoa, sweet potatoes, raw veggies, nuts, and seeds, right? These are all really high in protein. You can add straight up any sort of fake faux meat that you want to, Beyond Meat chicken strips, Gardein. All of these products are available to you at every single grocery store. Guys, do you know that Walmart has like one of the largest selections of vegan food and vegan and organic food at like amazing prices? Like, I was shocked to have discovered that recently when I was stuck in Massachusetts during the first part of our quarantine. And I couldn't go to the grocery store, and I had to do online shopping at Walmart. And I was like, what? Walmart has all of my vegan stuff. Okay. amazing, and their prices are not super expensive and they're affordable. Yes, please. So it doesn't cost you more. I'm not even bringing that point up because it doesn't cost you more. And it's readily available anywhere. So, and all those brands, they all make gluten-free options too. So I just keep listing all of like the whole food plant-based sources, but I'm not against using any of the fake meats, especially if you're transitioning for the first time. They're a pretty good substitute. And then you always want to actually make sure that you have a little dessert in your life. You can get some soy yogurt, vanilla, cashew yogurt, almond yogurt, all sorts of like yogurts these days. Some berries and granola in there, and you're really going to be able to satisfy your sweet tooth without reaching for sugary products like ice cream. We actually, I'm not even kidding, I have a giant bowl of frozen mango sitting right here that I'm eating, and this is what I eat as for my after dinner treat. Delicious. And so here's some final tips. So focus on how much you eat and why. Are you more hungry because you exercised today? Are you more hungry because you're stressed out? Cut out the crap, calorie-rich processed foods. Don't eat late at night because it'll disrupt your sleep. And you need to have very deep sleep if you're an athlete. No fad diets, guys. There's no intermittent fasting. There's no low carb. There's no low fat. Just eat, okay? Focus on increasing your fruit servings dramatically by making green smoothies every day. Reduce oil, especially when you're starting in cooking in a pan. Use vegetable stock or steam your vegetables. The biggest tip that I tell people is to buy an air fryer. So this helps with this process immediately. No oil-based dressings. There's a lot of oil-free dressings out there. Try and have one salad a day. Try and have one green smoothie a day. You should actually log your training. You log your training, so you should log your food. You can keep a daily food log for at least 2 weeks. That way you have a blueprint of what really works for you. So maybe you've dropped off, you're not in training mode anymore, and you have to like get back into it. You always think you're going to remember what you were eating, and maybe you're going to maybe forget, right? Because it can get pretty detailed. So keep a food log for a few weeks. Change your mindset. Do not place your main focus on what you're cutting out. Instead, focus on what you're adding in. Nutrient-dense, whole foods, high fiber, fruits, vegetables, and plant-based proteins. I always tell people to aim 80% for your goal and 20% for your soul. You don't want to place so many restrictions on yourself that you develop like an organized eating disorder around it. You want to aim for progress, not perfection. We all know that when we get into certain social situations, it may be a little harder to be absolutely perfect and impeccable with our diet. The point is that you always try and make the best choice in the moment. And finally, do your own research. The same amount of research that you apply to buying new gear or deciding on the next race should be the same research that you place on your nutrition. You should look into buying a book about plant-based nutrition or following other high-level professional vegan athletes. So I have a few books here that I'll share with you. This one's called How Not to Diet. This is by Dr. Greger, who runs nutritionstudies.org, which is my go-to resource. This is a new book that just came out, and not many people know about it, and it's my new Bible. It's fantastic. Plant-based sports nutrition. It covers absolutely everything. So there's that one. And then this is a book that It's really basic, but I like basic and I like simple. It just gets right to the point. And it is called Plant-Based Muscle by Robert Cheek, who is pretty famous in the vegan bodybuilding world. And that concludes my chat. I hope that you found this very informative. And if you have any questions, you can find me at plantpowerbootcamp.com, and I'll be happy to help you out along your way. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.